Did you know that in 1977 a feat was achieved in this car that has never been repeated again in Australia's greatest race? When Allan, Moffat and Jacky Ickx combined to win the race that year in this XC Falcon hardtop, they became the first and the last all-international pairing to win the great race. Of course, when we talk about international drivers, we don't include our friends in New Zealand because they've been so ingrained in our history here in Australian motorsport and have had such success throughout the years. However, that hasn't been the case for all international drivers from further abroad. In fact, in 64 runnings of this event, only 7 international drivers have ever stood on the top step of the podium. Going right back to 1966, when Rano Aaltonen, the Finnish rally driver, was the first person ever born outside of Australia and New Zealand to win the race in a Morris Cooper S that he teamed up with Bob Holden. Fast forward to the most recent winner from overseas in the great race, Alex Brummett in 2019, who won with Scott McLaughlin in a Ford Mustang. Previous to him, you have to go back an amazing 29 years to find the next person who won from overseas, and that was Win Percy in 1990, who won in a Val Commodore that he paired with Alan Grice. And prior to that, 1985 was the year that Armin Hain from Germany won with John Goss in a Jaguar XJS. In 1976, Bob Morris finally broke through for a Bathurst victory when his British co-driver John Fitzpatrick limped home his ailing LH Tirana SLR 5000. However, Canadian-born Allan Moffat was by far and away the most successful international driver ever at Bathurst. He won the race 4 times, in 1970 in an XW GDHO Phase 2 Falcon, in 1971 again in an XY GDHO Phase 3 Falcon, and both of those times was a solo driver race as a Hardy Ferodo 500. In 1973 he went back to victory lane again, this time teaming up with Ian Gagan when it became the Hardy Ferodo 1000 and it was a mandatory 2-driver race. And then of course again in 1977 when he backed it up for a 4th time in an all-international and only time ever all-international assault when he teamed up with F1 ace from Belgium Jacky Ickx, and they won an XC GS 500 hardtop. So in today's video we're going to celebrate that significant and unique moment in the history of Australian motorsports by opening up Assetto Corsa and going back in time to the 1977 Bathurst 1000. Welcome to Bathurst 1977. My God, this car is loud. We are here. Whoa, whoa, whoa. At Bathurst, Mount Panorama, the greatest track in Australia and quite possibly the entire world. We are on board Allan Moffat's XCGS 500 Ford Falcon hardtop, and you can see right on top of the screen there, lap 2 of 11. So we've got 10 laps here. Whoop. 10 laps here to go in this race as we climb the mountain in this absolute brute of a car. Got a yellow flag here, possibly car stopped somewhere on track. Of course, back in these days, you did have all sorts of obstacles to contend with, like stationary vehicles and flat tray trucks and things like that, recovering cars around the circuit. Hopefully don't see any of that here today, but what we should see is a whole bunch of cars of all different varying speeds. We're going to take it pretty easy here as we work our way across the top. But before we worry too much about the other vehicles that we might see on track, we should probably have a chat about the race itself, because 1977 is one of the most well-known and most famous runnings of the Bathurst 1000 in history. Adored by Ford fans for obvious reasons, because this is the car that won the race in a truly emphatic victory. A lot of people will remember the absolutely infamous scenes of this car and the other team car driven by Colin Bond side by side down here on the last lap and all the way to the finish line in a form finish that for many was just considered as the greatest victory by Ford of all time in this motor race. At the time it was considered that, and I think many people probably agree that it still is possibly the greatest victory that Ford has ever had, considered a crushing defeat for Holden at the time. Of course, the rival Tiranas at the time were fast, but not fast enough on the day. Peter Brock did take pole position in his Bill Patterson. You might remember, if you know your history well enough, the Bill Patterson number 25 yellow, blue and white Tirana that Peter Brock drove. But on race day it was all about the Ford dealer team and Allan Moffat, who, like I mentioned at the top of the show here, won this race with Jacky Ickx, the only all-international driver lineup to win this race in the history. If you go all the way back, even through the early years at Phillip Island, when it was the Armstrong 500 at Phillip Island, for the first few years before the race was moved to Bathurst. Sneak down the inside here. There we go. And even if you go all the way back to then, this is the only all-international race. I mean, only 6 different drivers from overseas have ever won the race. Also, Ricard Rydell, if you consider the Super Tourers from the late 90s to be included, although they were not, for me anyway, that was not Australia's greatest race, because it did run alongside Bathurst on the 2 years that they raced here in those late 90s. And that was a whole different event in my opinion. It was a 1,000 kilometre race around the mountain, but not the great race for those years. So I shouldn't discount that though. Ricard Rydell did win one of those races, but the great race itself has only had 6 internationals ever step on top of the podium. And this man, Allan Moffat, the only multi-time winner with 4, this being his last, 1977. As we go thundering down Conrod Straight. Of course, back in these days, 1977, there was no chase. And look at that, perfect example. The little Toyota there. Supremely good under brakes compared to the big heavy Ford. But this thing was a monster. It weighed a lot more than even the Tiranas that it was racing against in its class. But it had something like 460 horsepower. And it was insane in a straight line. Just all power, just raw, brute force muscle car. Of course, it competed in that main class for outright victory in the race in the 3001 to 6000 cc class. The Big Bangers. Although the Big Bangers were probably more the 80s. People probably remember that era more for... these are just proper muscle cars in the 70s. We're going to sneak our way up here. First gear. Through the cutting. Obviously a full 4-speed manual. Have we got room? No, we're getting blocked. We'll have to wait. Go on, get out of the way. Sneak down the inside there. Bit of a risky pass. We've got a bit of a queue happening up in front of us here too. And a yellow flag. It's now cleared. Oh, big crash. Who was that? That was a Tirana, I think, over the wall. I wonder if that car continued. Just trying to look in my mirrors, which you guys can't see. that was a huge crash. But yeah, so there was the main class, 3001 to 6000 cc class, which was just Falcons and Tiranas essentially. I went to go for 5th gear there, it doesn't exist in this car. There's 2001 to 3000 cc class, which had the RX-3 Mazdas and Ford Capris, 3-litre BMWs. Craven Mild car. I thought that was a Tirana for a second. We all know Alan Grice's Craven Mild Tirana. And there was also an up to 2000cc class. It's got one coming out of the pits here, which had a couple of different Alpha. Oh, that car came out of the lane. It runs me wide. Got the power down the straight though. A couple of Alphas. There was the Alfettas and the 2000 GTVs, the BMW 2002s. There were Ford Escorts, Holden Geminis. We've seen a couple of Toyota Celicas. There were Dolomites, Volkswagen Golfs, and we've seen a few of those cars already. They're up to 2000cc class, and that's why they're so much slower, with so much less power. And really, it's hard to comprehend what it would be like racing these cars on the same circuit as those, because the speed difference is just unbelievable. I don't know if we'll see too many of the other classes of cars, like our lap speed. I don't know if we'll be quicker enough than those to catch too many of them in these remaining few laps, but possibly. We're a little bit fast across there. Now that we've got no traffic this time, I've got to sort of learn how fast I can go. We don't want to go over the fence here either. And as a matter of authenticity, I kind of like the fact that you take it easy, you know, like you don't, this isn't like modern day racing where it's a 1,000-kilometer sprint race. In these days, drivers used to have to look after their cars or they'd never see the finish. In fact, even the form finish between the two teammates, for those that remember the race, will remember that Allan Moffat had no brakes at the end of that race. They were miles off the pace. Because Jacky Ickx just could not adjust to these cars particularly well. He struggled all week or weekend in the car with the brakes particularly because these cars are so heavy. He came from open wheelers where there was so much performance, so much bigger tyres, so much less weight, so much more aerodynamics. And by the end of his time in the car, he used up all the brakes. There were no brakes left. So at the end of the race, Moffat was limping around essentially, and Colin Bond could have and perhaps should have gone on to win that race and by a fair margin, but obeyed team orders to sit behind and come across the line second in a form finish. Of course, there was a huge gap back to third position, not even on the same lap, so they could afford to do it, but those historic images of the smoke coming out of the front of the car under brakes because the brakes were so badly worn, and this is not the sort of track you'd want no brakes, especially in cars like this. I am going to try and step up the pace a little bit though, because I'd love to try and see some more of the cars here. Because it is pretty well represented. Tried second gear there, that was almost a crash. Yeah, the cars are pretty well represented here in this video across all the classes. I think most of these cars came from Assetto mods. I probably should have looked this up before I started recording, because I know that question will probably come, where do I get this stuff? And I think even the track might be from there too. But it's been so long since I installed any of this stuff, I honestly can't remember all that well. It just, I hope you guys can even hear me over this motor. I've got the sound turned right up. Because why not? Unbelievable sounding. We'll listen to it sing. Pretty much into the limiter here. Now, I don't have a speedo up, but its top speed was something like 275 kilometers an hour or something like that, which is really hardly any slower than the cars of today. I think we've got 4 laps left this time. Maybe 5. I forget the way that the lap counter works in this. So much understeer as we climb across the top of the mountain. We're catching up to a car up here. Might be back into some of these slower cars again, I'm not sure. It is. Gonna catch him on the straight though, which is lucky. Unbelievable closing speed. Is this a Dolomite maybe? How's the top speed difference? Unbelievable. And the brakes, I can confirm, are horrific. Cross the line we go. There's a few cars in the pits. Definitely starting to get a bit more of a feel for this thing though. There's nothing better than driving a big, high horsepower, low mechanical grip, low aero muscle car. H pattern, heel and toe shifting. Tyres are starting to feel nice as well. It's just on the drift, you turn it in, gets loose, and then it gets mad understeer. Oh, hold on to it. I don't think we want to be going any faster than that. Bit of a brake lock there. Just trying to find the limit. I think it'll be 2 laps to go this time by. Just hear it in the limiter right down here at the bottom of the hill. Unbelievably scary prospect to be going this fast. Without the chase, like you're coming down to a 90-degree left-hand corner with just absolutely no safety features at all. I'm looking at my timing that you guys can't see just to get a bit of an idea where we are. I think we are the best part of half a lap behind the next. Of the fast cars, which we're just not going to make up, so we probably won't see any, which is a bit of a shame. I'd love to get your thoughts though, if you are an Australian fan of particularly the ATCC and the bygone era of Australian racing. Were you around when this race happened, or do you remember it? Even if you don't, do you actually know about this particular race? Do you think that it is the greatest Ford victory at the mountain? Maybe you don't. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts about the race. Or if you're not familiar with it at all, did you find this interesting, or would you like to see more stuff like this? Because for me, the history of Australian motorsport, the history of motorsport is just fascinating. I love this stuff. In some ways, I consider myself to be a student of the sport because I love the history. Hard on the picks. Stop, 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 stop. Heel toe downshifts. Oh, we got one of the Holden dealer team Tiranas in the lane. We are making time up on the other cars, but still a long way. I think that lap counter might be changing when the leader crosses the line, not when I cross the line. So it looks like we're still going to have one more lap after this one, perhaps. I always grew up, as many of you guys know, if you've watched my channel and even watched my current sim racing stuff, that I am a Holden man. There we go, leader is on the final lap. That I'm a Holden man, General Motors man, through and through, not a Ford man. I've got mad respect for these cars. I just love any muscle car, but I was always a Holden man. For me, Allan Moffat was the bad guy. Although he was before my time. I grew up in a Holden household, and it was ingrained in me for a very young age that Peter Brock was the man. And I therefore grew up to become an enormous fan of Peter Brock and watched his racing endeavours throughout the 90s as a kid. But of course, I've gone back over the years and spent so much time watching the history, and Allan Moffat was like the bad guy for many, many years in my mind as the Ford man. Got to respect what he achieved as a driver and as a man. His book, if you have not read it, is a good read. But what are your thoughts? Are you Holden? Are you Ford? If you're Ford, was Allan Moffat the man for you? One thing I think we can say without any doubt is that when we exclude Kiwis from the question, when we ask about international drivers, Allan Moffat, by far and away the most successful international driver, although he lived here and although he was born a Canadian, he wasn't truly an international because he was so ingrained in Australian motorsport, but he technically was from overseas. He's Canadian and by far the most successful international driver in my mind. We've seen others over the years come here and race in the championship series full time and things like that, but none more successfully than this man, in my opinion. Of course, 1977 in particular was a great year for him. He won the Australian Touring Car Championship that year also in this car. So we get a bit of traffic here on the last lap. We're probably going to get stuck here down the hill. Oh! Another one of the big Falcons off the track back there. I don't know if you guys saw that. Just blazed past very quickly. Stuck in the embankment on the right-hand side. Ooh! That was close. And we unwind the power down Conrod Straight. Look at it. It's like they're standing still. Guys, I've absolutely loved putting this video together. And I've loved telling some of the story from 1977. If you guys want to see more of this sort of stuff, let me know. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button below and hit me up in the comments. Let me know you want to see more of it. But this is Bathurst 1977. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Hobbo88. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.